Good afternoon. We are back for the second half of the Jamie Ranning Show. This is Paula Maloney as the guest host, and I am privileged and honored to introduce the threesome that I have on the orange couch. This is a first, 3 adult men on the adult couch. We have Dick Herman, we have Coach Vito Capizzo, and Dennis Caron. And this really is to talk about the 45 years of coaching that Coach Capizzo has given to the students of Nantucket, and Dick Herman and Dennis Caron were an integral part of that. And I want to turn the camera over now to Vito. Vito, you know, truly don't know what to say to you for all that you have done for the kids in this community. 45 years of coaching. When did you finally decide to retire?
Well, Paula, first of all, I want to thank Dick and Dennis and you and Channel 17 for carrying our games. That was a big plus for us, even though, you know, it's like the old story, the movie, the ugly, the good, and the bad.
It's the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Whatever.
I'm pulling the violin. I'll keep going, Vito. Already we're starting. Go ahead.
When we started out with the bad, when I first took over in 1964, and then we got the good in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Actually, football put Nantucket on the map before the rich and famous discovered us. And then the last few years, it's been ugly. Very ugly, as a matter of fact. In a way, the last 2 years I've been thinking about it because nobody's lasted as long as I have at that funny farm, public schools that is. And the community really have been a great help, and the media, you people, Channel 17 and the other station, carried our games, win or lose, and I think that's a credit to you people.
Well, I think it's a credit to you, and you're certainly modest when speaking about yourself, but to 45 years in a coaching position in a day and age when you see it, quite frankly, even within your own school system where a teacher lasts a year or two, is admirable at best. I mean, you started in 1964 when kids were wearing leather helmets. You were drawing plays in sandy soil, I read. You even were quoted as saying you had more dogs on the field than boys.
That is true.
And your attitude was don't panic. And the funny part about your story, there's humor all the way around, as you all know, but you thought when you were coming to Nantucket that you were coming to
Nantasket.
Nantasket, and your wife Barbara thought you were coming to an island in the Caribbean.
Well, see, my roommate is from, she's a rebel, she's from Georgia, and she'd never been east of the Mississippi River. So when I called her from Woods Hole, in those days the only boat was Woods Hole to Nantucket, right. I stopped at a bar, I believe it is called Lehigh. I think it's still there, Dick, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I called.
Now, why are you looking at Dick to answer that question and not Dennis? Dennis might.
Well, whatever.
I wouldn't know. You wouldn't know. Okay.
No, he came 72.
Revealing your cards already. Go ahead.
So anyway, I called her up from the bar, and I said, all right, I have a job offered. Jim Kelly was the superintendent of school, and he needed an answer in 24 hours. And I said, we're going to be living on an island. And, of course, she's never seen snow. So it was a culture shock for her, from Georgia to Nantucket.
Interesting. And you know, for people that don't know that are watching this, you played at the University of Alabama.
Well, let's say I didn't really play.
You played on the practice squad.
Right.
Under Bear Bryant, and he was given the name Bear by, it's an interesting story. Why did they call Paul Bryant Bear Bryant?
Well, there was a circus in town, and I guess if you pay so much money and to wrestle the bear, you got some money back. And he volunteered to wrestle the bear. I believe it was in Arkansas, but I'm not positive.
You're right, it was in Arkansas. And this is my question for you. I was reading up about you, and it was quoted that he asked you specifically to be Joe Namath's roommate to keep him in order. Now, was Joe Namath somewhat of a discipline problem, and was he not doing his homework looking at you? Call the kettle black.
No, well, that's a rumor. What actually really happened, when Joe was a sophomore, I was a senior. I did my practice teaching at Tuscaloosa High School. Joe flunked freshman English and sophomore English. So he was going to go to California with Joe Musil, who also got drafted by the Jet. He was a fullback. And Bear Bryant said, no, you're not going anywhere. And he didn't want to, at that time we didn't have athletic dorm, the A dorm they call it now.
Right.
So he was living in a dormitory, and he decided to move in with us. So during the summer, going to summer school, he lived with myself because I was doing some graduate work.
No kidding. And
Yeah.
do you keep in touch with him at all, or?
Yes and no. I saw him, believe it or not, about 7 years ago. Well, I talked to him on the phone when John Dooley and Michael Fee, they used to run in New York a camp, quarterback camp. Him and Doc.
John Dockery.
Huh?
John Dockery.
No, John Dockery, correct.
Thank you, Dennis.
And so I called him up, and I think he wanted like $175. And I said, tell the Polak that I'm only giving him 125. So he called back, and he wanted to know where the WAP was. That's what he used to call me.
These are
and,
Vito-isms, by the way.
And so Doris says, who's this? He says, this is Joe Namath. Tell that cheap WAP to these, I'll take him for 125. So Doris came over and got on the field. We didn't have walkie-talkies in those days. And she said, guess who I got a call for? I said, I don't know, the Pope? She says, no, Joe Namath.
Unbelievable.
So that's a true story. So Dooley and Michael Fee, I believe, were the two quarterbacks who went to his camp.
Incredible. I mean, there's so many stories, I think, of that 1980 Super Bowl team. I think he had 71 players, if I recall.
That was 1980.
Or 1980, excuse me. And Dick Herman, who many of you know in the community, wears several hats. Dick, tell me a little bit about, you probably were the first that did coach with Vito starting in 1968. A historical year in its own right, but for you and Vito, a historical year. But tell me a little bit about what it was like coming aboard, being recruited by Vito to coach.
Being recruited is the right word. I was starting out here as a young teacher, unmarried at that time, and went down to practice and hanging around. And Vito's very good at seeing people hanging around. He knew I had a football background from BU, and he talked to me, and I went out and helped him out a little bit at practice. But then he also found out I was still dating my future wife, Maureen, and I'm going off island weekends. And all of a sudden, I'm going over to Our Ladies of Newton to scout them and find out what they had.
St. Clements.
St. Clements and Somerville and Christopher
Columbus.
So I would go up and see Maureen, Friday and Saturday night, and say, let's go to a football game Sunday. How about seeing Our Ladies of Newton play? And she looked at me and said, what?
You romantic devil, you.
So I would go over and watch the Our Ladies of Newton game and then come back to the island. Vito would be calling me about 9 o'clock Sunday night. What did you find out? What did you find out? Because Nantucket would be playing Our Ladies of Newton next week. So I'd come to practice on Monday with the scouting report, and that's how I got my foot in the door. And then he needed an assistant in 1970, and he asked me to be it. And it was me and him, and in those days it was just two coaches, and then Dennis came along a few years later and got the JV program started.
Which he's done a phenomenal program with. A lot of you know Dennis Caron on the island. He wears a lot of hats as well. My daughter just passed her learner's permit test with him, we're hoping. Dennis, welcome, and tell me a little bit about your first thoughts as to how you came in with Vito and Dick, and the camaraderie between the three of you as coaches, both on and off the field.
I came in 1972 in the summer. My wife was back up in Gardner, Mass, where I was teaching. I came down here, got the job, and I talked to Vito. I was going to coach basketball, which I did. And I talked to Vito, and he said, I could use another coach. So I went out and I started in 1972, and what we did was we played a varsity schedule, and we had 4 JV games. And Dick and I, I guess Dick, you and I did the first couple.
Yes, I helped you out.
And then after that, I was on my own. So it's been that way since.
Wow, and you're still involved. I mean, Dick is doing commentaries for Channel 17, covering football. You're very involved in broadcasting as well. Vito, any thoughts or plans for this year? Will you be pacing the sidelines as a non-coach, or what will your role be?
Well, I'll be the downtown quarterback, the second guess everybody. I'll probably go after 44 years, it's been my whole life, and I'm going to miss it, there's no question about it. But it was a good journey. I have no regrets, and I'll be down there at all the home games, and probably for the next 2 years, I'll be playing the Vineyard, the Snake over there, Don Herman. So
who spoke quite highly about you and said, quote unquote, he's a living legend. But continue about the Snake. Go ahead, Vito. Go ahead.
Well, the Snake and I, we have quite a bit in common. I mean, he's a great disciplinarian, and he's turned the program around. We used to go over the Vineyard, and come back by boat. We used to fly over and come back by boat, and the kids would be down the wharf doing the hoop, because in those days, Vineyard was a basketball community.
Right.
When the snake took over, though, it changed the things all the way around.
This is Paula Maloney. We'll be right back.